with the president's defense that he did nothing wrong, nothing at all in his dealings with Ukraine.
What I believe he did, one, was that he called the president of Ukraine and asked him to become involved in investigating Joe Biden, who was
You believe his wrongdoing began there, not before?
But
not before?
I don't know about that, but he admitted that. The president admitted that. He released a transcript, he said on television. The second thing was, at least in part, he delayed the military and other assistance to Ukraine in order to encourage that investigation. Those are the two things he did. I think he shouldn't have done it. I think it was wrong. Inappropriate was the way I'd say improper, crossing the line. And then the only question left is, who decides what to do about that?
Well, who decides what to do about
that? The people is my conclusion.
I think ferreting out corruption is absolutely the right thing to do. Now, if he was tying it to other things, that's the president. It's probably something that I wouldn't have done, but focusing on corruption absolutely.
He didn't mention corruption in that call, though, as you know. He just mentioned Joe and Hunter Biden and Burisma, and then he mentioned this conspiracy theory about Ukraine interfering in the election in 2016.
So, again, probably not something that I would have done. It's out there.
So it's wrong?
He's done it now. The president has a lot of latitude to do what he wants to do. Again, not what I would have done.
The president does have a lot of latitude when he's surrounded by a bunch of useful idiots who will say anything to defend him. That was so pathetic. It's really hard to watch. Is that going to be Lamar Alexander's legacy? Really, leaving the Senate? Really? Thanks for not saving the democracy. Good on ya.
Senator Marco Rubio of Florida put out a statement, writing in part, on the first article of impeachment, I reject the argument that abuse of power can never constitute grounds for removal unless a crime or crime-like actions is alleged. However, for purposes of answering my threshold question, I assumed what was alleged is true.
Great.
And then I sought to answer the question of whether, under these assumptions, it would be in the interest of the nation to remove the president. I will not vote to remove the president because doing so would inflict extraordinary and potential irreparable damage to our already divided nation. Senator Rob Portman of Ohio also released a statement saying, I believe that some of the president's actions in this case, including asking a foreign country to investigate a potential political opponent and the delay of aid to Ukraine, were wrong and inappropriate. But I do not believe that the president's actions rise to the level of removing a duly elected president from office and taking him off the ballot in the middle of the election. Let's bring in right now Washington anchor for BBC World News America, Katty Kane, Democratic presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. First, let's begin with you, Senator. What's your reaction to those Republicans who are now coming out and saying what the president did was wrong, but is not removable?
Well, first of all, I wish I was sitting there right now with you in Iowa, Joe, where I was yesterday, and I'm coming back today. I think you see we are doing incredibly well there and surging right at the end. But I felt it's my constitutional duty to come back, and I believe the people of Iowa understand we're having the closing arguments. And I am sickened by what my Republican colleagues have been saying. I think this is a search for the truth. And regardless of how they voted and will vote on impeachment, I think one of the most critical moments was when we had that 51-49 vote on witnesses. They didn't want to hear the truth. They know exactly what John Bolton's going to say. He put it in his manuscript, which is right out there for people to see. And I don't think we're going to wait 5 years for the truth to come out. It's coming out in 5 days, in 5 weeks. And this is going to be on their shoulders.
Yeah, you know, Katty Kay, it seems that Katty Kay is going to have a question for you, second, Senator. But Katty, it seems that the Republicans could have done this in the very beginning, even in the House, and saved themselves a lot of humiliation by saying, yes, what he did was wrong. Now let's have a rational debate on whether it justifies the removal of a president from office. They would have been on much firmer ground. But these Republicans who were saying it, Lamar Alexander in particular, said what he did was inappropriate, but we don't want to hear the entire story. So John Bolton can't testify.
Yeah, I mean, there's been this whole shift in the Republican argument, initially starting out with he didn't do it, and I think that's the problem, is they started out by saying he didn't do it. Of course, if he had done it, that wouldn't be good. We wouldn't like that. But now, oh, yeah, well, he did do it. We've seen this continuously through the Trump presidency and through the Trump election campaign in 2016, where the goalpost shifts dramatically when members of his party have to realize what they're actually
And who did this more dramatically than Lindsey Graham, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, who said, if there was a quid pro quo, then I'm going to have problems with that. Lindsey found out there was. Everybody's admitting it in the Senate.
But actually, I don't have a problem.
But he says this is instead he calls it a, quote, lynching.
But in a way, perhaps the most surprising or hypocritical is Joni Ernst talking about the corruption issue when it comes to President Trump. This is the president that has suggested that we should overturn American companies not being able to give bribes abroad.
Right.
Corruption is what Donald Trump has been known for during his career, in his business dealings, and potentially in his presidency too. And yet we're saying that, well, he actually holds corruption very importantly and thinks that's a very serious issue.
Question for the Senator.
And remember, Senator Ernst is also the one last week who ran out to the cameras, as Casey knows, and said, I wonder how this is going to play in Iowa all this time.